This is something really created by consumers. Because the reason why we're all in this is because we want to change the world. Now, by the time we reach 40, most of us realise we weren't going to change the world. Actually, all we would hope was that the world wouldn't change us, or at least it wouldn't change us too much. So one of the little things that we could do was make decisions that affected our families. Right? And so when we go into supermarkets, we make decisions about this is right or that's not right for our family. So this is how Fairtrade has grown out of consumer social responsibility, not corporations telling us how they see things. Okay. So that's one of the other retailers. Now, in another life, I'm also the secretary of Fairtrade Birmingham, one of your sister groups, and we were at the launch of Cadbury's chocolate. It's interesting this, because you've got the chairman, the chief exec. This is when they were Cadbury's, you know, before the Americans took over. They got the whole boardroom set up, and only about 4 press arrived. So that all of their executives there, and our Fairtrade group from Birmingham, and that was it. So they made the presentation to us. And you know what was interesting? And I heard a presentation from the Tate & Lyle team. Tate & Lyle said very much the same thing to these guys. In fact, Tate & Lyle, really, you needed to have Fairtrade sugar in order to give rise to this. It was about the company ethos. It really changed how people inside the business felt about it. Now, you know, we have a term, you've probably come across it, kids at the back, right? I want you to think about this. Greenwashing, right? This is where, you know, like whitewash, there'll be no whitewash at the, yes. Well, but there is plenty of greenwashing that goes on. And this is where organisations use CSR, yeah, social responsibility programmes, in terms of public relations. You know, where public relations, where, you know, big corporations pretty much do what they want, but then they have good press relations, and then they send in the PR team to keep them to line. Okay, so we're very much about this being a ground-up project. So for us, that was great. Very difficult to get Cadbury's to engage. Quite difficult now. Then, I think they're up for it. But since the Americans took over, I'm not sure they get it so much. And you know, Fairtrade America has become a slightly different thing outside of the Fairtrade labelling organisation. But at least they use the mark, which is one thing. But for some reason, and I can't explain why, the Americans don't get this quite so much as the rest of us do. So it's bigger in Canada than it is in America. Actually, one of the challenges for us is to get Fairtrade recognised in the producer communities. So if you go down to Colombia, Costa Rica, Brazil, Ethiopia, to get those communities to understand what Fairtrade is. And that's, you know, that's going to be the next challenge. Yeah, we have to go in stores and promote our stuff. Our branding is a little bit different, and the reason why our branding is different is because there's already ethical coffee companies. You know, Tradecraft are there, Suma are there, Equal Exchange are there, and Café Direct are there. Right. Plus, every own label, as opposed to brand, every own label, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, etc., have got their own coffee, and their coffee is for the most part Fairtrade. I think with the exception of Tesco we discussed. So we wanted to do something different. That's not reproduced properly, but we wanted to reach consumer group 18 to 36. And the reason why we said 18 to 36 is because we knew that people would say, from the record industry, don't know anything about coffee, and we'd say, it's true, we don't know anything about coffee, we know something about the consumer group 18 to 36, because that's been our sector selling to that group. So it was just actually to find our way through the door there. And presently, ethical consumer recognises as number 2 in a list of 32 brands. At the bottom, you can't see it, but it's, yeah, it's Starbucks. Well, you'd expect that. I'm sure the cost is on there, to be honest with you. Possibly. Who cares? Right, so that's our front now. That's a bit better. And that's how it looks in the stores, if you can find it in the stores. So we're only in 400 stores. the co-op alone have got 4,500, I think. Roughly 4,500. Not all of them belong to the cooperative group. But there are 23 different cooperatives that trade under the cooperative brand. And it's one of the complexities of the cooperative movement. Okay, this is the one with the writing on, so I'm going to explain coffee to you, and then we'll come back and see if we can fix it altogether. So, this is the same channel for Cafe Direct, and it's the same channel for Equal Exchange. In fact, Equal Exchange and ourselves, and Tradecraft, will produce at the same factory. So you can say, the coffee's going to taste the same then. Well, there are 1,600 different coffees. You can mix them together and create blends. We don't do that. Or you can roast them at different temperatures, make them darker, lighter. So no two coffees ever end up tasting the same, even if they're produced at the same plant. But I'm not sure where Suma manufactured it, and I know that Cafe Direct do all their manufacturing in Ireland. So, but I've seen the bosses from Cafe Direct at our factory, so I think at some point or another we'll be coming back to the UK. So it starts with the farmer. We can't buy from the farmer. If we can, but it wouldn't be sustainable. There's another method, another model. It's called direct trade. On the face of it, direct trade looks like it should be the one we're all supporting, but it's not. What happens in direct trade is you strike up a relationship with the farmer, and you say, this product's good. We're going to buy it from you directly. There's no middleman. We'll buy it from you directly. We'll take the stock. But next year, if the coffee's not quite so good, then we're going to another farmer. It's not really sustainable. There's two sides to this story. One side is Fairtrade, the other is cooperative. And the reason for that is these farmers could not survive unless they formed cooperatives. So I think I heard the tail end of someone earlier on talking about coffee and talking about the fact that it wasn't roasted in the country of origin. There was some roasting going on in country of origin, and then chipped out. But these cooperatives create a wet mill, right? Which a beneficio, right? Now it's an investment of about $40 million. So it's a big investment. So you need a lot of farmers coming together to be able to create a structure like this, with government funding, NGO funding, sometimes funding from some of the big coffee companies, people like Hinckley, and they create this huge structure. Now, coffee is sold on the New York commodities market. Right. So have you seen trading places? Do you know about trading places? Yeah, with Eddie Murphy, and they get him in and they show him different commodities, and they show him the orange juice and the coffee and the pork bellies and gold, and they say, but of course the gold doesn't grow on trees. Right. And they're explaining the commodities market and how Duke and Duke, right, were, whatever happened, they made money. And that's true. Right. They're the commodities agents. Now, commodities, the price of commodities is changing as we speak. Right. So people are sitting in front of the screens looking at the commodities market. When we buy coffee from a cooperative, we are paying the New York price as it is at that point. Now, some coffees are better than others. So we're talking about 100% Arabica coffees. Okay? The Robusta coffees, the cheaper ones who are used in instant, they're mostly grown in India, or actually a lot of it comes from Tanzania. But it's a different product. Arabica coffee is what you're going to drink in Starbucks or Costa or anywhere else. So these coffees are quite expensive. Generally, they are going to be priced at source for green coffee at between $1 and $2 a pound. So if you think that a bag of coffee, 227 grams, that you're going to buy in the shops retails for about £3. You can see the margin between the stuff that as it's growing on a tree in Uganda or Ethiopia and what you've got in your supermarket in Waitrose or in Sainsbury's, right? There's a lot of intermediaries taking a chunk out of it. What would happen if you would take all of those intermediaries out? I know Cafe Direct like to give the impression that's what's happened in the channel. We call this disintermediation, where you take out all of the middlemen. It can't work in this particular commodity. It can work perhaps in some commodities. I don't know if it can work in bananas, for instance, but it certainly can't work in coffee. Here's why. So the price of coffee is priced by the pound, but we never take delivery of a pound of coffee. It's bought by the bag. Right, and depending upon the country of origin, those bags are either 65 kilos or 60 kilos. There can be 70 rarely, mostly 60 kilos per bag. So we're buying these bags of coffee. We can't buy one bag of coffee. We have to buy a container of coffee. And a container of coffee is 20 tonnes. Well, we can't buy 20 tonnes of coffee because we don't have that kind of business. And most of our competitors wouldn't be able to buy it either. So we all use agents like D.R. Wakefield or Anjaro, who are now owned by this firm. And they consolidate shipments. That means that they'll take a container of, let's say, one of our cooperatives is Coupe Tarazu. They're in Costa Rica. So they'll take a container of Coupe Tarazu coffee, perhaps 2 or 3 different grades for 2 to 3 different customers. Right? And they will ship that container over to Rotterdam, and there it gets split up. Right? So 5 tonnes going to Germany, 5 tonnes is going to Holland, 5 tonnes is going to the UK. All ends at the Tilbury docks in Essex, and it just sits there. Right? And the coffee can sit there. It could sit there, by the way, for 5 years. This is green coffee, right? So it's already gone through the processing at the beneficio at the wet mill. It's had the fruit. See, it looks like a grape, right? It starts off green, some of it stays green, but most of it turns red. And then the fruit is stripped away, and then the kernel of the fruit is dried. Some of it is patio dried, and some of it is dried in big selenium drums, about the size between these 2 pillars. And it's a huge investment, a huge process, a big manual job. And it's great for communities because it employs a lot of people. And what's happening with these cooperatives? They're getting money in advance from people, from the agents. So they're often saying to the agents, look, you'll be taking, 10 containers from us in the next 6 months. We really could do with cash flowing our crop for our farmers. Can you advance us on taking some of these shipments? And we came across this, I was in Nepal, came across this actually in Nepal. A very good example in Nepal is with the, do they grow on the goats? No, cashmere. Yeah, cashmere makes suits from. Right. In the Himalayas, the Himalayas are closer to China than they are to Kathmandu. So the Chinese go into the regions and they buy in advance next year's crop. Right? So the Nepalese are never able to actually access any of that crop, which is a tremendous pity because it's one of their best products. You know what they do to get the goats to grow the cashmere? They're grazing, then they take them up into the mountains to shiver, to make them cold. They grow a coat, you right, come on back down, take the coat off and go through the whole thing again. There you go. So, to be honest, it's pretty interesting, it's all interesting. So, the more you know, the more you know. So anyway, this stuff ends up at Tilbury Docks, and our roasters are a company called Master Roast. There's about 20 or 30 of these big roasters in Britain. Our roaster says that they roast 1 in 10 cups of coffee that are drunk every morning in the UK, whether it's Starbucks, Costa or anywhere else. So they've got a big investment in coffee. I know they've got at any one time 150 tonnes of coffee in stock and 150 tonnes of coffee on the water. So on the water, that means it's coming over by ship. Right. So, you know, the possibility of us buying directly from the farmer or even directly from a cooperative, they're pretty much out of the question. Also, this is what's happening. This roaster here, they're going to make about a third on our product. They make the biggest margin. Some of our margins are quite small. We're working on margins between 5%, it can be lower than 5% on our Ethiopia coffee, because it's just expensive, and 30%. We're working between those two margins, but we have to supply retailers. I know people like the cooperative group want 50% margin from us, right? Which is just not possible in our price matrix. The independent cooperatives like mid-counties or central will work with us on 23–24% margin, and then it's possible. But a lot of big supermarkets want really high margins. And of course you have to make a commitment to them. And that commitment is interesting, right? Because say for instance we were supplying Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's said, right, okay, we're going to supply this Costa Rica coffee, it's fantastic. We're going to make a commitment to taking a ton of this every month for our stores. So I don't know what that means in terms of pallets, but let's imagine it's 6 pallets of coffee, which would be, a pallet would have, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 bags of coffee on it. So a lot of stuff. What they'll want to know is that in the contract, got the same price for the whole 12 months ahead. But we've also got the consistency of supply all the way through for the next 12 months. Well, there can be a problem with that because a lot of the coffee's not being grown yet. Right? So the coffee very much relies on what's the crop going to look like in January. Now, I can speak with some authority back history about what's happening there. It is January when the crop is grown. It's something interesting about that actually. They don't pick their own coffee. 5 million people live in Costa Rica, half of them are Americans. Most of the men have gone north looking for better paid employment. So you've got a lot of these farms run by women. In fact, our friends at Equal Exchange market their Ugandan coffee as women coffee. You know, coffee that's being produced by women. Same thing's true in Kenya. A lot of coffee is being produced in Kenya. They're very small amount of land, maybe 3 or 4 times the size of this room, and they'll grow all sorts of things on there. Coffee will be one, papayas will be another, breadfruit will be another, whatever they can grow, and they join different cooperatives to sell it. But in Costa Rica, they bring itinerant workers down from Nicaragua. See, coffee's grown just off the equator, okay, between the 2 tropics. But it needs, the best coffee is grown at elevation to about 2,000 metres. So you need a constant 60 degrees Fahrenheit, but you need air pressure as well. So it can be quite technical, and the soil management is really difficult. But these trees, they grow the trees, they have nurseries growing these trees, and the government programme is to supply the trees. Trees cost about $1. That's all they cost. They're constantly having to replace them. And if you've got to replace 10,000 trees, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of money. So they do rely on the cooperatives for help, to fund that, and they rely on the government. And the government's getting, in fact in Costa Rica it's illegal to grow Robusta coffee because they don't want it contaminating Arabica coffee. And they've all been hit with this disease, coffee blight. We tried to grow some lupins in our garden 2 weeks ago. Pretty covered in aphids in no time. Yeah, I can't imagine being a farmer. It's horrible. Right? A lot of technical work goes into it, and also a lot of manual work. And a lot of it is being done by women and by families because it's seen as a second income. So they're bringing in workers from Nicaragua. What do? Well, and we don't have this in Britain. But in Costa Rica, they apply the minimum wage to itinerant workers. Wouldn't it be great if that happened in Britain? Wouldn't it be great? It doesn't happen here. We're an advanced economy, apparently, according to the government. I can't believe it, but there you are. They have to provide housing. They actually compete with other farms to get these workers. They come down for 2 months to bring the harvest in. And without them, they're dead. So they're paying the minimum wage, which has become the average wage, in fact. They've got little schools built in their communities for the Nicaraguan workers who come down with their families and put them into school. And they feed them. So they get all of that, all of those social benefits. In fact, if you go back to the 1950s in Britain, if you go back beyond that, if you go back to the days when Guinness and Cadbury and all these people were, you know, the industrial philanthropists. This was going on in the industrial age in Britain, back in the last century. You know, my father used to take me to at Christmas. He said his work had a do for kids, you know, and they gave him coins, brand new coins, and all sorts of stuff. You'll remember this, right? Yeah. Can you imagine that today? Because it's not going to happen. But today we've got corporate social responsibility. I hate it, by the way. I hate CSR because I hate the word corporation. You know, and this is someone who studied corporate strategy. But look, this is what's happening. So the stock comes down, master roast. Now I said that the beneficio, they've got an investment of about $40 million. It's on the FX today. We were talking about if Sainsbury's wanted a tonne per month. I'd have to fix the price and fix the supply. So the only way I can fix the supply is to buy off next year's harvest. That's the future. Right? The future hasn't happened yet, but I have to imagine what the price will be. Imagine what the price will be is not enough. I've got to fix the price. So there we go to the futures market to fix that price. Now, if I'm paying at the moment, say, $1.60 a pound, but they're telling me that in January next year, Costa Rican coffee, it doesn't look good. You know, we think it's going to be $1.80. You're going to have to pay $1.80 a pound. So I need to fix now, from January through to the end of my contract, at $1.80, I'm losing 20 cents on the pound. And what happens if, when the stock arrives, it's $1.70? I'm in trouble, right? But I can insure it. And that insurance is called a derivative. Yeah? So that's a futures market, the derivatives market, and the commodities market. It's simple. And like all people in the city, right, they make money out of this by their knowing and you're not knowing. But actually, our knowing doesn't really help us, because the best we can do is just go to Waitrose and pick up a bag of coffee or whenever we want it. So we draw it down, and then we have our foils. The foils come in about the size of this table. Huge 45-kilo drums, and they go onto these big machines called revealers. And it runs the bag, or sorry, the foil through the machine, and at the same time there's other equipment which is roasting the coffee. Now the coffee, you've heard this said before, dark roast. No, dark roast. No. Anything that ever says dark roast, don't pick that up. It's going to be horrible. And here's why. Because if ever you went to a restaurant and you said, oh, I'd like a steak. And well, said, how would you like it? I'd like it really well done. Right. The chef's going to come out and he's going to say, you know, this beef is from Hereford, right? Are you sure that you want it really well done? Right. Now, the truth, yeah, you're going to destroy it, aren't you? Absolutely destroy it. In fact, the roasting colour has to be to a very certain colour. It has to be accurate. In fact, we had a lot of coffee just rejected yesterday on Ethiopian coffee, which was supplying down to the M5 services south at Gloucester, the new services. And and that's because it was 20 points off its colour calibration. The only time you would roast a coffee dark is if it's awful coffee. If it's awful coffee. So all of our coffees say what they are, the origin, right? And a lot of our competitors, soon, equal exchanges, do the same thing. What we don't do is Italian blend after dinner coffee. We don't do that. It's nonsense. It's a bit like wine, right? Do you remember wine? You know, we know all about wine. But do you remember back in the 1980s, right? Yes, you've got all sorts of wine. You've got Black Tower, Blue Nun, yes. The Piedor. By the 1980s, trust me, by the 1980s, we became experts in wine. At the back, we became experts. You walked into a bar and you said, oh, I'd like a glass of wine, please. Red or white? White. Sweet or dry? Do you remember? Yeah. Today, we all know, we know the difference between New Zealand and South African wines and how different they are to French wines or Italian wines. We know the difference. We just know. You know. Also, we know the price as well. We go, if it's French, it's going to be more expensive. Probably not quite so good. You know, we know. And there's actually some great wines, aren't there? 3 for 10 quid. My wife's got me the off licence all the time. Well, look, I'm telling you, right? This is what's happened with coffee. That's where we are with coffee at the moment. By the time we're done, people go, that Kenya coffee. And this is true. African coffees are supposed to be the best coffees around, but they're a little bit acid. Right? Have you ever drunk your coffee and you've gone, I feel a bit sick? Sometimes, it depends where you are. Right? Some people's body's a little bit more acidic than others. And I've drank coffees and I feel a bit nauseous now. I drink my coffee. You won't get that with any South or Central American coffees. Right? But you will get it with African coffees, even though they're higher quality. Supposedly. That's what it says. So anyway, that's what's happening there. And then we have to sell through into people, distributors. So we have distribution fees to pay. Mad distribution fees. We have to pay 16% distribution fees. Sometimes as high as 25% distribution fees. We're paying 30% to Master Roast. We're paying 16% to Blake Moore's, 50% to the Co-operative. You're asking, do you actually make any money? No, we don't actually make any money. Right, so I'm paid by our record company, and I think it'll be a while yet before we make any money. Oh, yeah, I'm going to just show you some of our advertising, because we're constantly advertising. You've probably missed it because mostly we're advertising in the cooperative movement. And I want to say something about the cooperative movement which is interesting. This is a movement, right? The common theme being about change. In the cooperative movement, there's 6,500 cooperatives, right? Nothing to do with the cooperative group. Workers' cooperatives, all sorts of different cooperatives. This is in Britain alone. We're organised as an industrial and provident society. So if you go to Companies House to look for us, it'll send you to the Financial Conduct Authority. And we're registered there as a mutual. Now, when mutuals operate in financial services, we call them mutuals. When mutuals operate in commodities, we call them cooperatives. They're the same thing. What it means is this. You've got £1,000 invested, and you've got £100 invested. You've both got one vote each in that business. And that goes for the executive, people that work in the business, everything. And that's true of, would have been true of the Britannia Building Society, they're part of the club. Certainly true of Nationwide. Would have been true of the AA back in the day. And so there's lots and lots of different types of cooperative. Obviously John Lewis Partnership is a cooperative, probably one of the better known ones. So we created, it's a bit of a mess out of it. I created that. So this is Columbia Coffee. This guy actually is interesting. He's the son of the guy that created the Coop Town Zoo 45 years ago. And he tells an interesting story actually, this which you can't see from where you're sitting, about how the cooperative pretty much paid for him to go to school. This is what these cooperatives are doing. Now, you know, I'm not being political here, but you'll have heard of the Cooperative and Labour Party. Obviously you've heard of the Labour Party. Probably the cooperative, what's that all about? 25 now members of Parliament are cooperative party. Half of the Parliamentary Labour Party are also members of the Cooperative Party. And I'm reminded of this because one of my directors is the secretary of the Cooperative Party, and we're all involved in the Cooperative Party, and we're involved in the politics, we're very much involved in the Labour Party and all of its, all that that means. About, you know, so we support, for instance, the living wage, we do all of those things. Fair tax, we're just signing up to the Fair Tax Charter, we do all that. You know, there is something, it just occurs to me. Good PR actually starts by doing the right thing. And, you know, perhaps, you know, with a lot of social responsibility, that's what a lot of corporations should be practicing. Doing the right thing, perhaps talking about it now and then, rather than making a big hoo-ha about it. So these are our ads that, you know, mostly to the cooperative movement. And it's a big movement. You put two groups of people together, Fairtrade and cooperative, and we think they're two halves of the same coin. I was at the University of Manchester, a presentation in Spanish, it's a little bit awkward, with an interpreter, and it was, I think they farmed melons or something like that, down in South America. And this lady was saying, yes, you know, I'm from the farm, but if any of us ask, it's fair trade, we produce fair trade, but if any of us ask for a pay rise, we get fined. So fair trade is part of the story. It's an important, very, very important part of the story. We can't cover everything, right, as much as it might want to. And one day it might, because this is, it's work in progress. You know, we're not there yet. In fact, we require, this is your risk actually, because there is no Rainforest Alliance city group or church group who go out there and do what they believe, or schools. That doesn't exist. These are corporations just trying to make as much money as they can. So this is one of our products that's not fair trade, forgive me, which is our Cuban coffee. And it's not fair trade because there's no fair trade certification in Cuba. And a lot of that actually is Cuban coffee. Ethiopia, Cuba again, a few of these. This was for our first AGM. We've got another AGM on Friday. I hate AGMs, mostly because I have to organise it and get everyone there and talk, and then show everyone the accounts, and we lose money. So it's never a great experience for me. But anyway, while we're there, come and join us this Friday. We're at Birmingham Town Hall. Oh, but actually, while I'm advertising, we've got a do, haven't we? We're working on a do together, right? And it's going to be in October. Go on.
26th of September, it's going to be at the University of Birmingham, and it's going to be like this, but on a slightly bigger scale, so it's West Midlands wide. So we're inviting any town group or Fairtrade church or any kind of Fairtrade organisational group that wants to come together and share best practice and learn from speakers. We're going to have Arun from Chetna Organic, who's a member of our board, and he'll be speaking. He's a fantastic public speaker, so there's lots of different workshops and things to get involved with, so we very much recommend that you come, and we'll be sending out newsletters and stuff, so if you aren't already signed up to the Fairtrade Towns newsletter, please do so. It's very easy to find on the website, and we'll be telling you all about it as soon as it's fully organised. Before Birmingham was a centre of the West Midlands, it was a centre of the Midlands. So, but you know, governments come in and go, draw a line here. All the same people, for goodness sake. Please come and join us, and you know, share, you know, what we know, because there's a strength in partnership, and it's.
Paul.
I'm almost done.
Paul.
Question? The kids?
No, what I was going to say was, can you confirm for me was that Che Guevara, that picture?
Yeah.
And I just wondered if you know,
Che wasn't actually drinking our coffee at the time.
not then, but he would now, no doubt. What I was going to say is an historical figure. He was very important in the rights of workers, wasn't he?
He was there and in Bolivia.
Just so the young people who know.
Obviously, he's not everyone's cup of tea, as they say. So,
Isn't he?
we have to remember that. But I'm going to yield now because the kids are going to come on, and then you guys are going to come and make. This is more about. This is what it's all about. We want to hear from you. Says it all. Yeah, that's my advertising pitch.
Thank you, Paul.